I talked with Molly about doing a Creative Mornings, I think it was like February, and I chose December because it was right after the inauguration, and I thought maybe like we wouldn't be here now, and then I would get out of it, but here we are. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and church was a big part of our life, and it was a church that was very centered on missions. And so we had like a missionary hallway at my church, and there was like traditional African garb and like Middle Eastern artifacts, and there was this big wooden map along this wall, this great like vintage thing, and then there were names of all of these missionaries that this church had sent out into the world. And they had buttons next to them, and so if you pushed like the Farho family, if you pushed a button next to their name, then over here on the map, wherever they were serving, a little light would go up. So like to this day, with the Farho family, I can strangely identify Burkina Faso on a map. Because as a kid, you remember, right, David? Remember? Because as a kid, my fingers would just fly over those buttons. And so that was a big part of my identity growing up, this sense of this otherworldliness. And I was a kid that was reading all of the time, and so my brain was just constantly in other worlds that were real or not. I was a kid in Nebraska, and so I was just convinced that like the real world was happening in a big city somewhere else. We'd have these mission weeks at church. This is me. We would have like missionaries would come and regale us with their tales every summer, and we'd barter for like Oriental Trading Company crap in like a market situation. And we would sit on these bamboo mats and eat rice every summer as we talked about other things that were going on in the world, which created this sense of like wanderlust in me, a little bit of discontent. So I blame it a little bit on religious baggage, but also on Disney. So I grew up with these narratives that I think a lot of us did. So Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's the creator of Hamilton and In the Heights, he calls it the I Want song. So every Disney movie, especially these princesses, have this I Want song. So in the beginning, it's someday my prince will come. So she's just sitting waiting for a man to come, which is another talk entirely. But Little Mermaid, I want to be where the people are. I want to be a part of their world. And for her, it was rejecting the identity that she had, right, as a mermaid, to go be with the people. Is that the first time mermaid has been mentioned in a Creative Mornings talk?
I think so,
oh.
Yeah.
So this is Tangled, this is Rapunzel. The name of this I Want song is literally called When Will My Life Begin? And then this is my personal favorite, this is Belle, right? I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. And one of the lines of this song is literally, I want so much more than they've got planned. And that was a big part of this discontent as this like tall, gangly kid with glasses in Nebraska, that if I could just get out of here and go do something, like then my life would begin. The most recent Disney movie is Moana, and she's this girl on this island, and she loves her people, but she can't go because the ocean is unsafe and she can't leave her island. And that's okay because she loves her people, but her mind is constantly on the horizon. And so she feels torn between these two worlds, to the point that literally in her I Want song, at this part, she's literally saying, what is wrong with me? And so that's kind of how I grew up. And so as soon as I could, I left Nebraska for college. I made it all the way to Ohio. Cornfield to cornfield, and I was there for 2 years, and again, just this like, this isn't doing it for me. If I could just go study, I was an English major, if I could just go study writing like in the city, then I would really have stories to tell. And so I transferred from this private liberal arts college in Ohio to a state school just outside of Philadelphia. And I was really starting to fall in love with this, writing became my strength and something that I was excited about. And I had the opportunity to do a communications internship in Bratislava, Slovakia. That map was really outdated, and so Slovakia wasn't a country, so I didn't really know where it was when this opportunity came up. But on my 20th birthday, I flew to Bratislava, Slovakia for a communications internship at a global nonprofit. And I felt like really important. Like, that was important work, and I was going to be a part of it. And during that internship, as internships should be, I discovered how the strengths that I have for writing could really be used in the nonprofit world. I mean, when you're telling stories about the impact a nonprofit is having, I learned that that helps people give money. And so the better story I told as a writer about the impact, the people who are being affected by this nonprofit's work, in this case particularly women and girls, the better story I told as a writer, the more money people gave and the more people whose lives could be changed. And so I got hooked on that work. Actually, full disclosure, part of going to Slovakia was to get over this boy named Michael Colletto. And so, spoiler alert. So I came back. Michael had missed me more than he thought he would, and we got married. And I've been waiting for this moment for 10 years. That's great. And so we were married about a year in Philadelphia, and I hadn't grown up a lot in the sense of like, what else could we do, right? What else could we do that was important? And so we actually went back to Slovakia. He works in communications as well. So we went back to this nonprofit in the same apartment where I had like cried my eyes out over him. Like, yes. So we're in Slovakia for a year, and telling stories through film, and for me for fundraising, and actually we ran out of funding, and so as sometimes happens with nonprofit, and so we came back to the States, and we were feeling a little lost, and then shortly after that we had an opportunity to go on a 10-day trip to Thailand with a nonprofit called the Sold Project that was working on the prevention side of human trafficking. Human trafficking was sort of just kind of coming into the cultural vocabulary as something that was happening and real, and the Sold Project was one of the few organizations that was working on the prevention side. And so Michael and I spent 10 days in Thailand with this organization learning about their work. And at the end of this 10 days, we sat down with them, and we said, what can we do? We want to be a part of this. How can we help? And they said, well, what we really need are people don't understand what's happening here. So if there's a way that we could communicate what's happening with these kids to like people who are funding us over here, like people to tell their stories. And we're kind of choking on my beer, that's actually all I can do. I can do that. That's our thing. And so we came back to the States. We sold what little we had and drove across the country to raise money and flew to Thailand to work as the communication directors of the Sold Project. So this is our house in Thailand in the final phases of construction. We are at the base of the Doi Chong Mountains, which used to grow opium and now grow coffee. And it was like the dream. Public education is not free in Thailand. And girls are less valued in that society than boys are. And so if a rice farmer only has $4 a day and school costs $1 a day, their sons are going to be more likely to go to work. So if a girl can't stay in school, what else is a 14-year-old girl without an education going to do to provide money for her family in the city? And so the idea of the Sold Project was to keep these girls in school and boys through scholarships, and then also supplement that education with the ideas that you don't have to be, the only examples they had were nurse and teacher or police officer, or for the boys a monk. And so what if we helped these kids understand that you can be, you like drawing, you can be a designer, like that's a real job. Or if you like telling stories, you can be a writer and make money that way. And so we built relationships with these kids in northern Thailand. We taught them how to play Uno. They kept calling me Jai Rai, which I learned is evil-hearted one. I'm a bit of a cheat at Uno. So every day these kids would come, and it was just this incredible setting and this incredible life, and there's this big part of me that's like, I'm doing it. I'm writing and I'm telling stories that matter, and these kids matter, and I know their names, and I'm getting great Thai food every night. Like it was just this millennial Disney princess dream, right? And so every day they'd come after school, and as the sun started to set behind the mountains, they'd hop on their bikes to go home. And so this picture is really my my clearest memory. This is our driveway of the kids there. And then hop on their bikes, and I'd stand on this balcony here, and I'd shout. And Ty, with a little bit that I knew, I would shout like, drive carefully or ride carefully, like on their bikes. And they would laugh, and I thought it's because I was like being like their mom. I had my tone wrong, and I was actually shouting shit carefully every day for months. So we're kind of living this dream, my dream, and I was 23 years old. At that point, I had lived and worked on 3 separate continents, and my 24th birthday, Michael took me out to this great Thai place, and he said, okay, so a year ago, if you could have been doing anything today on your 24th birthday, like, what would you be doing? And it was like this punch in the gut, because what I was doing on paper was so far beyond my wildest dream of what I could have been doing on my 24th birthday. I mean, I couldn't believe the opportunity that we had and that we were living and breathing, and it wasn't magical. And I don't know that like fulfilling is the right word for it, because it was important, really important work. But I realized that it wasn't magic. It's not what I thought it would be. And I couldn't sleep. And actually a couple weeks later, I had a motorbike incident and busted up my spine, and there was emergency surgery, and Bangkok asked me if a 6-foot-tall white woman fits on a Thai hospital bed. She does not. And so suddenly we're back in the US, broke. This was before the Affordable Care Act. We were broke from the health costs. I was physically broken, and we didn't have work to do. And through a weird set of circumstances, we ended up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We'd actually never really even been to Michigan before and didn't know anything about West Michigan. We had come from this weather to this weather. That was emotionally difficult. But when we got here, literally that week, Sarah Palin was launching her book tour at the Woodland Mall. And we're like, what is this place? Where are we? I didn't know, I mean, like, the idea of Dutch people, like in my head, I'm like, okay, that's like the Netherlands, right? And I work for a church now, a Presbyterian church, and I still kind of pretend like I understand the difference between CRC and RCA and this whole West Michigan culture, this kind of Bible Belt culture that we didn't know about when we landed here. I was devastated. Because like, what are we really gonna do that matters here? It's an old missionary trope, like, God, please don't send me to Africa. And that's like all I wanted, right? Like, please send me to Africa. West Michigan was my Africa. It just felt like there was nothing like that. No great adventure in the great wide somewhere to be done here. And so I found a job in admissions to pay the bills for a while. And then I found out about this job at the YWCA, which is located just a few blocks from here. The YWCA works with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And it was a job in communications where I could be telling the stories of these men and women and young people who've been affected by violence, and how you and your dollars can make a difference in their lives. And at the time, we were horrified that this NFL player had bragged about sexual assault, and that seems incredibly quaint now, but that was a big scandal at the time. And so it felt like, on paper, like, again, like really important work. I was using my strengths, and I was, I'm passionate about women's issues, and it felt like I was really doing important work. But it was in Grand Rapids, and so we struggled, and my mind was kind of on that next big thing, because my whole identity, in a way, had been tied to a stamped passport, and now I've got a Michigan driver's license. And I lost my wallet about a month ago, so I don't even have that anymore. And so at that time, actually the funding for this new position started to come to an end at the YW. This is a terrible nonprofit commercial, by the way. And so I found out about this job. At the time, I had told my friend when I applied to the YW, my friend Ashley, I said, that's my dream job. And so it felt like this big failure to start thinking about leaving. And it was kind of nice that I could blame it on this funding piece, but to be honest, there was this part of me that was just still discontent because I'm in Grand Rapids. And when can we go and do something that's meaningful? And so this job came up at Westminster Presbyterian Church. It was a new position they had created called Minister for Mission. Minister was a weird title to me to have, but it seemed like it would be like fun at cocktail parties or getting out of a ticket. And so, you know, Westminster is this progressive and affirming and inclusive congregation just 2 blocks downstate, and they've been in the heart of Grand Rapids since the mid-1800s. They were founded by abolitionists. And so being a part of the city has always been a big part of this church's identity. But for as long as they can remember, they've of course been financially supporting nonprofit organizations for the sake of the city and its people. But this big congregation started this conversation about, okay, what if we shifted our focus from writing checks, from this idea of patronage, right? What if we shifted our focus to participation, to people participating with each other, to linking their lives with each other and getting to know each other? And so this position was created to help facilitate it. And I remember thinking at the time that it was, that I didn't want to work for a church in West Michigan, for one, as different as Westminster is, I think, from your average church here. I didn't want to work for a church. And it was painful, the idea of helping other people do meaningful work. Like, I kind of made that work in my head, like, okay, I'm not doing meaningful work, but if I can help other people do meaningful work, that'll technically count in some way. And so it was about this time that that Moana came out. And I have 2 toddler daughters. And just to give you a quick understanding of Moana, she's this girl on a Pacific island, and like I said, she can't leave the island because the ocean is dangerous. Her dad won't let her go. And that's all she wants to do. Her heart is out into the sea. And as happens in life, you have to save the world. You're called upon to save the world, and she's the chosen one. And so she does get to go out into the ocean with the unique gifts that she has and this passion for the ocean that only she has. She gets to go out and save the world. And so I want to play a clip for you now of the part in the movie where she's gone out to save the world and everything is falling apart. Everything that she has brought to it is not working, and she's about to give up and go home. And there's also a meaningful dead grandmother in the situation that helps you to understand. But so this is Moana when she's about to give up and go home.
Why do you hesitate? I don't know.
And I'm sitting on the couch with my daughters watching Netflix and just crying. I was running through this last night after I put the kids to bed, and my daughter came downstairs and saw this part and looked at me like, I knew it! I knew you did cool stuff. After I went to bed, you're watching a lot of them. Sorry. And it's kind of embarrassing to admit through all this, self-aware as I would like to think that I am, that it was the first time that it had really hit me in a meaningful way, that it wasn't about where I was or about putting behind who I had been and leaving Nebraska and then Ohio and then Philadelphia and then Slovakia and then trying to get out of Grand Rapids, that it's me. And so I've been running all over this map trying to look for my light, right, above my head. And I'm watching this, and the call is inside me. Like, she can be the girl who loves her island and the girl who loves the sea. And she's the daughter of the village chief, and she's descended from voyagers. I mean, she says, I'm everything I've learned and more. And so for the first time at 30, I'm realizing that the light has been above my head the whole time. And I've been racing around the planet trying to find it, but it's me. I'm the light. And we're this cool creative community, right? So it's all like Edison bulbs. It's like very cool. And so in my role at Westminster in this, how do we get people linking their lives with the city? I stopped thinking about it as like, well, if people are stuck in Grand Rapids, we'll help them find some volunteer work. No, like you each have something unique that you're good at and that you're passionate about to offer right here. And so we created this website called servegr.com. And the elevator pitch for ServeGR, if I can put my elevator pitch on voice for a minute, is servegr.com is a hyper-local website that connects you to ongoing volunteer opportunities that play to your strengths and use what you're passionate about and fit your schedule. And they're all within the greater Grand Rapids area. So how do we help you know that it doesn't matter what's on your resume? The focus on ServeGR is the titles of these roles, not the nonprofit organization. So your resume in terms of I'm a designer or I'm a developer, that doesn't matter. What are you naturally good at? Because if you're good at being hospitable and working with people, that's not going to change no matter what your context is. That's just what you're naturally good at and who you are. And so you can put that to use here in Grand Rapids with your Michigan driver's license. And so ServeGR, coincidentally, went public the week of the presidential election in 2016, which, to my daughters, I'm like, yeah, you won't have clean air to breathe in 20 years, but this was actually really great for my work project I was working on at the time, because it was really helpful for there to be this tool at a time when a lot of people were looking around and opening their eyes to things that had been happening all along and going, I've got to do something. Like, what am I going to do? What can I do right here, where I'm at right now? And so ServeGR is a tool to answer that question. These are my daughters on election day. So a year ago, Beatrice is wearing a shirt that says Future President, and this is Gemma and her Little Citizen t-shirt. This is before we voted. And so this is the city. These are my people that existed on that day. And when I think about all of the time that I spent running around trying to do something quote unquote meaningful on paper, now the day after this photo was taken, I'm thinking, these girls don't have time. They do not have time for our if-onlys. If only, once I get to this place, then I'll do something meaningful. Well, once I get some free time, then I'll do something meaningful to make a difference. These girls do not have time for each of us to be waiting for that to come along. The kids at HQ do not have time. Right here, where you are your own context. Don't wait for a better context because you are it. These are my daughters on Halloween this year. I was trying to get them to take a picture saying trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat. And they were just like totally deadpanning me. and which I get a lot. And so finally, just on a whim, trying to get them to smile in some way, I said, all right, say, I am Moana. Boom. That is literally our Christmas card photo. It says, Happy New Year, nice try, 2017. These girls, every time they hear it, this morning, driving here, we played that song. Every ounce of their fiber screams, I am Moana. I mean, it's just physical for them because they believe it. And that's what I want them to believe. They're going to learn hard things along the way, and they're going to have to go through this journey themselves. But if we are working together on making the city a better place right where we are with the people who we are, then these girls get to keep believing that with every fiber of their being, the way that they scream, I am Moana. So thank you for being a part of that.